Welcome to the Starfish Storytellers, the podcast that makes a difference one story at a time by bringing storytelling to life.
Well, the moment or the month that we're doing this interview is the month that my father passed away. And it's been 15 years, but if you've lost someone close to you, especially on the anniversary of the event, you think about it. And the day that he passed away in June, I was flying out to give a presentation, so I wasn't there when he passed away. But it happened so suddenly. So my father was climbing up a ladder to trim the trees and branches away from the house because he was having it painted. And he was both handy and frugal. So he thought this would save some money. But he fell and he landed on his side. I guess my mom must have helped him into the lounger chair that he always sat in, but he couldn't get up. So my mom called my brothers and I, and we said, he should go to the hospital. Take him to the hospital. He wouldn't go. So the next morning, my brothers and I went there, and I guess in a way we kidnapped him. We picked him up, we put him in the car, we took him to the hospital, and they did tests the entire day. So we sat and waited, and then finally at the end, late in the afternoon, they said, your father did not break a rib or puncture a lung, which is what we thought had happened. Your father has stage 4 lung cancer and has maybe a week left to live. And that was a Friday. So he wanted to go home. He said, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. So we brought him home. I'm a writer and a speaker, so I just felt more comfortable. I wrote my dad a long letter saying, I'm so proud to be your son. I've learned so much. Just all the things I wanted to say, but probably never said. And some things even after the fact I wish I would have written down to tell him. But anyway, I did the best I could in such short notice. I said, Mom, will you read this to Dad? But I was giving a speech on Monday. So Sunday night, I had to fly out to give my speech. And the last thing I said to my dad is, I'll see you tomorrow. And I'll get back as soon as I can. And so I was in the air flying, apparently, when he passed away. But in the time that we had together at the end, my dad never said, I'm proud of you. In fact, in my entire life, my father never said, I'm proud of you, son. You know, I've done some things, but he just, for whatever reason, couldn't say it. So at the celebration of life that we put together, I wrote a song. Oh, I say I wrote a song. The song just kind of came to me, and it just came out. I don't even know where it came from. It's country. I don't even play country music or listen to country music, but that's the way it came through me. And my band performed, and the people came up to give speeches and said such nice things about my dad. One of my dad's close friends, who they had a boat, my dad's boat and his boat were across the slips from each other. So they saw each other all the time. He walked over to me, and he had Parkinson's. So he got up and spoke, but he was very shaky. But he made it a point to come to me afterwards and say, your dad was so proud of you. I'm like, really? He's like, oh yeah, he would talk about you all the time. He would give everyone copies of your books. I said, wait a minute, what? My dad paid retail for the books? I can't believe that. But he apparently was proud of me, but just couldn't say it. That meant so much to me that Dawn would tell me that, because I may have never known. So a small gesture like that, you know, as is the spirit of this show, can mean so much to someone. That really had an impact on me, a big impact. So if it's even a small gesture and it doesn't seem like it's going to matter, I say we just go ahead and do it. And that one gesture by Dawn to tell me that my dad actually was very proud of me has carried forward in my life since then and meant a great deal.
Hello, my name is Liana Henry, and welcome to the Starfish Storytellers. I'm the CEO of the Black Dog Group and your host. I'm passionate about storytelling and on a mission to raise up the next generation of storytellers. We're called the Starfish Storytellers after the moral of the Starfish story, which centers on the power of one. Because no matter how big the challenge, every action matters. One step, one starfish, and one story at a time. Every episode will welcome a new storyteller who will inspire and connect with you. So thanks for tuning in. Now let's get started. Today's episode is From Surfboards to Standing Ovations, Building Life Through Stories. And with me today is Lee Silber. Lee is an entrepreneur, author, speaker, trainer, and lifelong storyteller. Over the course of his career, he's written 27 books, founded 5 companies, delivered more than 2,500 presentations to audiences all over the world, and helped countless individuals communicate their ideas more effectively. Along the way, he's built a life around curiosity, creativity, and a willingness to pursue opportunities others might overlook. From launching his first business at 11 years old, yes, you heard that correctly, repainting mailboxes, to moving to Hawaii in pursuit of adventure, to building a nationally recognized speaking and writing career, Lee's journey is a reminder that some of the best stories come from saying yes to unexpected opportunities. So, Lee, welcome to the Starfish Storytellers. We're really, really happy that you're here.
Wow, that was such a good introduction. You're the best. That just, oh, wow. That felt good. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you've done all of those things. So,
We always are looking forward. What's next? To
mm,
appreciate and look back and realize that you've done all those things. I think it helps us move forward because we feel confident that we've done it before, we can do it again.
yeah, yeah. So, we like to start every episode asking our guests to introduce themselves in their own words. Would you like to share a little bit more about who you are and maybe how storytelling has become a part of your own life?
Well, we can't give ourselves nicknames. They have to be given to us. You could try, but it won't stick. So people kept calling me the facilitator of fun. And I thought, I kind of like that. I'm going to run with it. I hear it enough. And so everything I do, I try and make it fun. And so that includes storytelling because if you take an idea or a point you want to make, or even if you're selling, whatever you're doing, a story makes it more enjoyable. It's just the fun comes from the story, even if it's the same information that would have been given in facts or bullet points or just written all out, whatever method that you would have used to convey information, doing it with a story is just so much better. And so that's what I've done in my writing. So my business books, I call them business books, but they're really almost parables. There's a story for each point. And when you speak, they always say you need a hook or a story about every 5 minutes, if not more often than that. So storytelling it's effective. I feel like I'm a natural storyteller, so I'm comfortable doing it. And I can just see in the audience, there's kind of a ups and downs as you're standing. You say you pull from the audience the energy, but when you look out there and you could just see them like, oh, 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 oh. And it's stories are when there's the yeah, and then the when you're just giving them information that's just kind of dry. So storytelling is fun, and I want to be the fun guy.
You are the fun guy.
Oh,
Thank you for sharing your story with us. Sometimes I wonder if it's a generational thing with telling your kids that you're proud of them. I know personally, having grown up with a father who never told me he was proud of me ever, ever, ever. And I think it really, I wanted to joke with you a little and say, whew, overachiever, because I think it's almost, you have a choice. I think when you have these things happen in your life, you can let it tear you down or you can let it fire you up. And clearly, you were on a mission to do great things. And I hope that you are proud of yourself because you should be proud of yourself, Lee. You should. I think when I was listening to your story and also in sort of all of the information that I've gotten from you in our conversations, your life didn't seem to take a straight line. I don't know if you've ever seen the graphic where it's 2 lines and there's one that says how I think life should go. And it's, point A with a straight line to point B. And then the other graphic is how life really is. And it's point A with a lot of squiggly lines to get to point B. But it seems like your life was a series of adventures and experiments and opportunities, and they gradually got you here. And I think that stories are something that maybe we might tell after the fact, but we're living them along the way. I often have heard it said that sometimes the most challenging moments in our lives are the stories we most love to tell later. Maybe in the moment when we're going through it, not so much, but then later on, it's in those moments of grit, I think, that we learn the life lessons. And I look at your life, you're a young entrepreneur. a surfer, a speaker, an author. And I just see somebody who's just willing to continue that curiosity, just following wherever it led you. And I think it's a lesson for our listeners to really, as they get to know you today during the podcast. So, storytelling, I think your story is a powerful reminder that storytelling isn't just about what we say, it's about the choices that we make and the life that we create.
Yeah, and I would say, as a storyteller and a writer of both fiction and nonfiction, like I said, I try and blend the two. Factual fiction is kind of a fictional fact. So you're using stories to convey information, which I think I've already said. But what I want to say is when I'm writing pure fiction, we always say you want a deep, rich character. You want an arc of a character. So they start here and they end up here. Hopefully it's a better person at the end. But to write about characters, you have to know about them. I create kind of a dossier on each character in each story. And even though I don't put it all in the book, it's good for me to know. And then it occurred to me, kind of what you were saying, we should do that for ourselves, kind of a curiosity about ourselves. Some of those things that we do just naturally, our tendencies. What are we doing when time just flies and we don't even notice it? Where do we struggle? And kind of create that story about ourselves in the sense that we understand ourselves enough to know which opportunities would be best and which opportunities maybe isn't right. So I think I have mostly made the right choices because what I'm trying to do is when I ask myself if something is a possibility or an opportunity, is it something I enjoy? Is it something I'm capable of or do well? Is it something that potentially will make a difference in someone else's life or will it make money? I'm putting it through a filter. And at the end of the filter, if it has enough yeses, then I would say yes. So it's not just a curiosity and then, okay, sure, I'll do anything. It's knowing yourself. So being curious about what it is that really resonates with you, what you do well, what you know you would succeed at, or you have a good shot at succeeding at, it helps make that decision making easier.
So, you were talking about being a writer of fiction, but then you said something about, I don't know if I heard it correctly, fictional facts or facts. So, does that mean that you may have had a life experience and you then choose to maybe go on and write a fictional story, but it's based on something that you experienced, somebody that you met? Like, have you done that? Do you have any books like that?
Yes, and I think it was Mark Twain who said, write what you know about. And it might have been Wayne Dyer who said, teach what you need to learn. So,
Mhm.
yes, I try and use my own stories as the basis, but then change them. But a lot of my characters are women, so it's not really me, but it's experiences that I've had that I can change the names or change the locale or whatever. But what we want, and if you're afraid of we can't get through anything without using. I mean, we used to gossip, and now we don't gossip anymore. We just talk about AI. I was trying to avoid it, but I have to say, if you're afraid of AI or, as a creator or whatever you do, I think that what I'm trying to get at is to write an authentic story, an authentic
Mhm.
character. If it's based on something real and then you just fictionalize it, it comes across as more real. And I don't know if AI can do that yet, but I don't think it can. So
Mhm.
that authenticity that comes from using your own stories to create new stories, I think is one way to by telling it, you're reliving it, and hopefully it's good. And by using it as the basis for something else, it's got that air of truth to it.
Now, that's a really good tip, especially for, I think so many content creators are using AI. So I think that's a really good point, especially for someone who's an author. The other thing that you said, pitch on the spot a little here. You've moved through a number of different, I know I said that life wasn't a straight line and you moved through sort of very different adventures along the way in your journey. But you said something about, or as you were talking, you were conveying people should be thoughtful in their journeys. And you're saying that now as a seasoned career person who's had this long life of experience. Were you always thoughtful in your journeys from the get go?
Well, the one thing that doesn't exactly fit is how did I end up in Hawaii?
Yeah.
don't you want to leave San Diego? It's pretty close, but it was an adventure. And I didn't do it willy-nilly. I worked for my father for a while, and I was interested in expanding our territory, which my territory was. So I was a sales rep for San Diego, parts of Arizona, Nevada, and I thought, well, why don't I go west, which would be Hawaii? So I went there just to see if I could open some new accounts, which I did, and I fell in love with it. But I also noticed while I was there reading the paper that they were just any job you wanted, you could have. They just had a shortage of talented, qualified people to do some of the jobs. And I looked at that, boy, I wonder what would it be like to work in a radio station? What would it be like to be a deckhand? What would it be like to work for Maui Jim Sunglasses? I was employee number 5. And so I had my work for my dad, but in between, I worked all these odd jobs. And I discovered what I didn't like, which you would think, oh, a deckhand, that sounds like a great gig. Working on a sailboat or a snorkel tour. Not so much. Maui Jim Sunglasses, I hated being indoors. I'm on Maui and I'm inside an office. Anyway, it was an opportunity to try different things and see if they fit. And so from that, I realized some of the things that I truly wanted, which was freedom, to the ability to work outdoors if possible, and a few other things that I only discovered by trying something to see how it fit, and it didn't fit. And then what did fit was when I got a gig to speak in Hawaii, and I was on a stage in front of middle schoolers, and I thought, this is cool. I like this. So there you go.
There you go. That was part of the journey. That's great. So, but it sounds like you knew, right? You knew what you wanted and what you didn't want. You knew I'm in Maui. I don't want to be indoors. So,
Right.
right. So you started your first business at 11 years old, repainting mailboxes. Does that sound right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
at 11
Um,
years old, I wanted some money.
okay.
And my dad encouraged me to work, and so I could work for him, which I did on the weekends. I get up with my dad, which I actually enjoyed working in his warehouse. But my friends had jobs like paper boy, so to get up early to collect for people who didn't want to pay. It just didn't work. That didn't sound like fun. And then some of the other jobs that my friends had, why don't I start my own business? Because my father started his own business, my grandfather started his own business, so it was in the genes. And so I looked at my own mailbox and, boy, this thing really needs some fixing. So I said to my parents, what will you pay me to fix it? And they said $5. And I thought, $5? And the supplies? Yes, and the supplies. So I did mine. The neighbor saw it and said, hey, will you do mine? Before you knew it, I did the entire neighborhood that summer. I made a couple grand in 1975. So it
Wow,
was
that's a lot of mailboxes.
it was a lot of mailboxes, but I could do it when I wanted to. I could go surfing in the morning or in the afternoon. I just worked it around the work, around my fun. And I've wanted that my entire life, that freedom that sometimes an entrepreneur, sometimes they say they work more than an actual person who has a job, but they love it. And so I enjoyed that process of seeing something run down and then making it brand new again, but without having to throw it away. So it was good for the environment. I put bigger numbers so their address was easier to find. It looked great. I loved the process. I probably sniffed a lot of paint that I shouldn't have at a young age,
Mm,
which explains a lot. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the summer, I had a really nice little nest egg.
wow. And not that we're going to go through every stage of your young pre-adolescence and adolescence, but from there, how long were you painting mailboxes?
Well, the experience of doing it that summer encouraged me to find another opportunity like that. So my father's business, he had slightly blemished or damaged things that he would eventually return, but it took him a long time to get to that. And so I said, Dad, why don't I take these down to the swap meet and sell them? And we'll split the money and it's a win-win. It'll be faster and keep me off the streets. So I would go on a Saturday and Sunday and sell the products that weren't selling or that were slightly damaged. And first I sold them to consumers. Then I met a guy there who had his own, we were competing. And he said, I'll buy from you. So then I didn't even have to go to the swap meet. He just came to the warehouse,
Hmm.
I showed them what I had, and I was working 1 day a week and making more than all my friends. And they're, how do you do it? What's the secret? Entrepreneurship. So
Hmm.
it's not for everyone, I get that, but for me, it fit because I'm a self-starter. I'm motivated to do what needs to be done, and I'm not afraid to ask someone, hey, that I asked him, I said, well, instead of me, you and I competing, how about you buy from me? And so that's how that all became something I did for a couple years. From six, I had to learn how to drive, but when I drove, I would drive myself down to the swap meet, and it was good money and a good time. I was working outside, met all kinds of cool people, and I helped my dad out too. It was a win-win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really what really pushed you forward. Okay. So you have given more than 2,500 speeches to over 1 million people. A lot of people think that public speaking is about expertise, but I think it's more about connection. You're on the stage, you're making a connection. When did you first realize that stories and maybe not facts might be what audiences would remember?
Right away. Well, when I started speaking, I just naturally started telling stories. Not because I didn't have good ideas or material or something to share, but I thought if I attached it to a story, people would A, pay more attention, and B, remember the story and then remember the idea. And so I'm not saying this is my original idea. I was listening at the time to like Zig Ziglar. And it seemed because he would just tell story after story, and I thought, what is this? This isn't self-help. I mean, it's just a bunch of stories. But then I realized I remembered the stories and I remembered the ideas. So that's how I got the idea to do it myself. And once I started doing it and seeing results where people were really interested, you could see them leaning in, they want to hear the story. And at the end, they maybe didn't know that the vegetables were mixed in with the spaghetti sauce. They got something useful out of the story. And so when I was asked to be a part of Chicken Soup for the Soul, the book, I realized, boy, this is exactly what people want is stories that can inspire, that can teach, that can make them feel something. And so if it was Chicken Soup for the Soul or the Reader's Digest or speakers who use stories, I found the commonality was people love stories, they remember stories, and then they retell them. And that's not happening when you give them a list of 7 tips to do this. Although that's for some people, that's very good. I think overall, people prefer everything delivered in a story. I know it's a
Mhm.
long explanation for stories work.
They do. They do. When I was getting my master's, one of the textbooks that we read was called The Story Factor. And in The Story Factor, I can't remember the author's name. I think first name is Anne. Her last name is escaping me right now, but she talked about different types of scenarios when stories would work. And she gave examples. And she said, for example, teaching stories to teach someone how to do something. And she gave an example of a new person coming into an office and they're going to be the administrative assistant. And the woman before them, Mrs. Smith, is retiring. And Mrs. Smith is well known across the office. Mrs. Smith could greet someone who came in the door, answer a phone with a smile, find the wandering CEO, get him to a meeting, and then get back to her desk before anybody knew she was gone. So when you're teaching the new administrative assistant, how do you think is the best way to teach them? Tell them what button to push on the phone or tell them a story about Mrs. Smith and the most preferred administrative assistant that we've ever had. Because when that new person is taking on their tasks, they may ask, what would Mrs. Smith do? So I love what you were sharing. I think it's the same thing. One of the things I was wondering about, because you've been on stage a lot, is there one story that you like to tell a lot from the stage over and over again? Or it finds its way into a lot of I know that your presentations and speeches are tailored to your audience, but is there a story that you've told on stage that sort of resonates across audiences?
Well, I'm lucky because I've been being asked to come back to the same group, so I can't tell the same story again. So I'm always looking for new stories. And so recently, I live at the beach, a couple houses in from the sand, but I ride my bike on the boardwalk almost every day or I walk. And there's a guy that just caught my attention. He's very tan, very handsome, older. It's hard to describe, but he's wearing boxing gloves and no shirt. And as he walks by, he just says to people nice things. And when he sees me, he says, "Hey, handsome." And not in a creepy way, but "Hey, handsome. Hey, young man." And it just makes you feel good. So I said, I'm gonna meet this guy. Oh, what's going on? So I got to know him. We sat down, we talked, and not long after that, someone thought it'd be funny because he had the boxing gloves to punch him in the face, and they knocked out his two front teeth. And so I took the story that I'd been working on about him because in my head I'm like, this needs to be told about Jay. His name is Jay Ondo. So I wrote a story about him. We started a GoFundMe, and the story and the GoFundMe raised enough money for him to have his teeth replaced. And so when I saw him after he had his new teeth, I said, "Man, that really was a terrible thing someone did to you. That's horrible." He said, "You know what? It could have been worse." And I thought, even with that kind of someone punching him, knocking his teeth out, it could have been worse. I'm like, the fact that he makes people feel good about themselves and that he takes everything in stride and always finds the positive and the silver lining. And I'm like, I want to be like Jay Ondo. And so it's a work in progress, but by me telling his story and showing a picture of him and, in all my speeches, it's for the audience and the point I think it's clear, but it's also for me. Every time I tell his story, it reminds me that when I see someone to find something I can compliment, if I'm thinking, well, why me? Why is this happening to me? Just, it could have been worse. And so the Jay Ondo story is my new favorite story.
That's a great story. And what a mantra, right?
Could have been worse.
Just could have been worse. Could have been worse. So let's talk about some of your books.
Okay.
I know that you wrote a book called The Credit Union Way. And I know when we were preparing for the podcast, I had asked about it then. And, every book from the author has a reason for existing, whether fiction or nonfiction. But really, when you think about the credit union way, I guess I'd really would love for you to share what is the story behind that and what was happening in the industry when you wrote it? What was happening in your life when you wrote it? Why did you feel compelled to write that?
Well, I'm a lifelong credit union member, so I'm a believer. That sounds weird. I think it's a great way to have your money somewhere that's doing good. You know the movie It's a Wonderful Life? It's kind of like that, where the Bailey saving, building and loan, the money when there was a run to try and get their money back, and he said, "Well, your money's not here; it's in his house and her house." And the credit union's like that. The money goes in, but it goes back to help the community. It's how it all started in a shoebox or a cigar box in the back room of a factory or something. Everyone put in their money and then they loan it to each other. And it's bigger than that now in scope, but it's the same concept. I love that. I also like that the credit union is the little guy. The banks are the big bad Mr. Potter, I think his name was in the movie, and the
Mm-hmm.
credit unions are the Baileys. And I like the stories that have the little guy winning or at least competing, and I identify with that. So I love the fact that credit unions are not for everyone, and that's okay. I think the people that work there are just naturally drawn to it because they care, they're compassionate, they're likable, they're personable, but they're professional. And that resonates with me as well. So it's the people that when I go in, they know my name. I trust them. In fact, that's one of the good things. Being small, they can turn on a dime, but also being small, they know their members' names. And so I just thought, what? And I think this is good for a lot of businesses. Who is your ideal client? Who do you really want to work with and for? And that I identified credit unions. So I went to the National Credit Union Association and they came up with the idea, we want you to go undercover, like undercover boss, but undercover in different credit unions and kind of create a documentary and a speech around what you find. Look for the good. So that's what I did. I was a janitor. I was a plant, the plants, I would water the plants. Well, I would just listen. I was a painter. And when I was done, I realized, wow, these people aren't faking it. It's real. They care about their members and they are going to do the right thing for those people. And so you can trust them with your money. So that's how it all began. And then from that national speech and documentary that I put together, I started speaking at different credit unions. So as I was going around the country, I realized as people would at the end of my speech come up and say, you know what, my credit union, I work for this credit union now, but I was divorced and I had no money and they were going to take my house and my car and the credit union saved me. And then I went to work for them because I wanted to do that for other people. I kept hearing all these feel good stories of just heart and soul. And I thought, is there a book like this? Well, yes, Chicken Soup for the Soul, but what about Chicken Soup for the Credit Union Soul? I don't want to call it that, obviously, but that's
Yeah,
how the
yeah,
book
yeah.
came about. And the stories in it weren't written by me, which is another thing that I thought was great. All these people who said, I want to be a writer. Well, let me give you an opportunity to tell a story, write it, and I'll publish it. So my stories are mixed in with others. Some people were anonymous, so there's no name, but it turned out better than I could have ever hoped for. And when people read it, you come to the conclusion that why am I not with a credit union? It makes perfect sense. Not for everyone, but a lot of people I think have read the book and said, I want that. The other thing that was odd is my own credit union, the one I started with when I was 10 years old, had a
Hmm.
little pass, we call it a passbook. I'd go
Yeah,
in and they'd stamp it and write in how much you put in and how much your balance was. And I mean, that's crazy to think of now, but that's when I started. Well, they grew and grew, and I better not say what their slogan is, but they became like a bank. They're huge. And so when I kept hearing these stories when I went around the country from smaller credit unions and how personal it was and how they did, a tragedy in the neighborhood, they were the first ones there with blankets and food and resources. I wanted that. So I pined for the day when my credit union was so small that I'd walk in, hey, Lee, Now I'm not just a number, but it's not like that anymore. So it brought
yeah.
back the feeling of the small towns bank that where everyone
Feel.
knew everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've been a member of a credit union since I was 15. So I've been a member of one credit union for 40 years. And my mom was a member. And then my dad became a member. And then all of us kids became members. Then we grew up and we got married. Our spouses became members. Our kids became members, their partners, their spouses. Like we have brought in so much business for this one credit union. They make life so easy. They make handling your money, moving your money, doing the things that you need to do with your money, their interest rates, everything is just makes it just so easy. It's like sometimes, and I know this is a sexist comment, sometimes women will follow their hairdresser wherever they go. It's like, I just wanted to stay with this credit union. It just really was a great experience. So I agree.
I'm
I'm a
still with
credit
my
union.
credit union, even though
The
they're
one that you were with
giant.
when you were 10?
Yes, I didn't.
Yes.
I would never leave, but I loved hearing the stories of how it used to be in my credit union when they were small. But like you said, it simplifies your life because I'm an Apple person all the way. And so if I need
Mm-hmm.
a new anything, I know what I'm going to buy because I like it, love it. That's the
Yeah.
thing. I love it. I trust it. Apple, it's not the Apple that it used to be. Southwest, I used to love that airline. I don't
Mm-hmm.
love it as much, but I'm still loyal. But the credit union thing, it's for life, for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm a Dell girl myself for when it comes to computers, and I always buy Dell. So I can appreciate you love your brand. You do. You're loyal to it. So I know when we met previously, you were talking about an upcoming project. I don't know. We haven't talked for a few months, so I don't know where you're at with it. But I think you mentioned that it might have taken a little bit longer to write. It's a book called Without Confidence, You Don't Get Shift, which is a great title.
Even
Um,
yeah, it makes me chuckle.
it's great. So, for you, as you decided to write this, there was obviously a story behind this because with you, I know there's going to be a story behind this. So, what was the moment where you realized that self confidence wasn't just going to be another self help topic, that it deserved a book? What were there stories or a feel or experiences you were having that were just pulling you back to this theme?
Well, the story I told in the very beginning, I think, kind of gives a clue that even this is, again, what I said, you teach what you need to learn. You
Mm-hmm.
also gravitate towards, if I'm working to help others with something, and it also helps me as a reminder or to work through things, that's perfect because I don't like when people are talking down to me. I'd rather
Mm-hmm.
it's we. We could all use a little boost of self-confidence. Not
Mm-hmm.
a brash, in your face. I mean, a kind of a quiet confidence. I think everybody well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people could use that kind of a boost. So I feel like it's not something universal. It's something that I also need help with. And so if you believe in the universe, which I guess I have to tell a story to tell this, to finish this story. I met a woman named Sunshine. Her real name is Barbara, but everyone calls her Sunshine because she's so positive and upbeat. And yet she was an orphan, not because her parents died, they didn't want her. And they lived in the town that she was in foster homes with. So they were there, they just didn't want her. That's so harsh. And she had a lot of hardships in her life, but yet she was always positive. And she lived the most extraordinary life of ups and downs and adventures and just it's a movie. So the way I met her was I was on a panel. I actually put this whole conference together and I was speaking about how to write your book and you should write. And anyway, she stayed after and we were the last two to leave the Barnes and Noble. And we're sitting in these little, I'll never forget, little chairs that the kids sit in. It's in the kids section.
Really?
And she's like, I want to write a book about my life. And I said, well, let's do it. Or I said, you should do it. So something about Sunshine, she just made you feel good about yourself. So of course you want to spend time with her. So we became friends. And whenever I'd see her, I didn't want to make her feel guilty, but how's the book coming? Oh, I'm too busy living my life. So she called me, this is like 20 plus years go by, and we're in touch this whole time. And she called me and said, I just got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And I want you to come and see me. So I rushed over to the hospice, I guess it was. And we went outside, we sat on a table, and she put her hands on my hands. And she said, I want you to write my book. I want you to tell my story. Wow. And that's a big ask, but okay. And so it took me a long time to write this book, but I finally wrote Sunshine and it won awards. There was some interest from Goldie Hawn playing an older Sunshine and Kate Hudson playing a younger Sunshine in the movie version. All kinds of things happened. But Sunshine left me with a few things from our time working on that book because we'd meet every Wednesday, kind of like Tuesdays with Maury. It was Wednesdays
Mm-hmm.
with Wes. And she kept saying, the universe provides everything you need. You just have to pay attention and say yes. And so that's kind of what happened for me is the universe kept saying, a book about confidence, a book about helping people feel better about themselves. And if it's not, and not just a book, a whole thing that ties together. So the first piece was I developed an app called Hashmark. It's from an Arnold Schwarzenegger book. He says making hash marks every time you do something good reminds you how many times you do good things during the day or good things happen to you. So the app is called Hashmark. It's called the Feel Good app. And what it does is you can hit a button and it says nice and it counts your wins. You can take pictures of things that make you smile or that you want to remember and it saves them in for that day. And then if people say something nice to you, you can record it as a video or an audio or type it in. Either you could write things to yourself or people say nice things about you, and it's all saved under that day. So you could celebrate that day and even go back and look at that day. So the book and the app and everything is just to try and make people feel better about themselves so they can, well, A, be happier about their life, but also to do more. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
confidence, when you have confidence, when you don't have confidence, you're less likely to, when the universe gives you an opportunity to say yes. But when you have confidence, and you hear something that seems like it's a challenge, it's not going to be easy. I'm not sure if I can do it, but I'm confident I'm going to try. And
Right.
that's the short answer to a very long, I give you a long answer, but we're storytellers. It's what we do.
That's right. You were telling a story. More stories. More stories. More stories. Always more stories. That's wonderful. I think I've seen it. I've seen Sunshine in your bookstore. I think Sunshine is in your bookstore, right?
Yes,
Um,
Sunshine it sold fairly well, but and like I said, it won some awards, but the process of writing it made it worthwhile. If it never sold one copy, although I wanted people to read it, it wouldn't have mattered. My time with Sunshine was invaluable.
mhm.
I didn't know what to expect when we sat there. And unfortunately, the arc of Sunshine was she passed away before the book came out. But in such sunshine fashion, I was doing a book signing for a different book, not far from where the hospice was. And she had them bring her to my book signing. It was on the second floor. They had to carry her upstairs. She wanted to be there for me for this event. that's sunshine. And she passed away a couple days after that, but she wanted
Wow.
to be there. So being around somebody that makes you feel better about yourself and
Yeah.
teaches you things, she was wise and always willing to share and always there to help you. It just made that time so special. And hopefully we all have someone like that in our lives.
Yeah. 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 I think if we think about it, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a client, somebody that, you know, reminds us. I was reading on LinkedIn, somebody that I follow on LinkedIn, and she was talking about, she was at a women's entrepreneurs event and there were speakers. And one of the speakers said, remember to do one thing every day that reminds you you're human. Because as an entrepreneur, we become these machines. And I think what you're talking about with Sunshine is just that you just getting to experience her life and just those moments of just pure humanity. And it keeps us right sized, I think, in those moments. And yeah, so thank you for that. I'm going to come full circle from your opening story to another moment in your life. I remember you told me a story about publishing your first book and telling your grandfather. And his comment was, well, anybody can self publish a book. And we talked about it when we opened this episode about how sometimes that some people would be discouraged by that. But really, for you, it seems like it was a motivation. What would you tell our readers as you're looking back now? And you've just written this book about confidence, or you're writing this book about confidence. Do you think it comes from believing in yourself or deciding to not let other people define who you are and what your story is?
I think it's not letting it hold you back from all that you could be and do. And so at that moment when my grandfather said that, one of the first things I did is I wrote a letter to just in general. I'm a young writer who wants to get published by a big publishing house. I'm looking for a mentor, anyone that's, can help. So I went to the fanciest part of town, Rancho Santa Fe, and they have like a main street and there's Rolls Royces and Bentleys and Jags and all. And I just put one letter on each car. I had my phone number and I got a call. Guy he retired. He worked, I think, as a president of Times and Mirror Books. And he said, I'll help you. And he was my mentor. And he was at my wedding. That took a lot of guts to do that, to just, write a letter and to put it on people's cars. And then when he called, to not be intimidated and to admit I need help and would accept help, and realizing that for him, whatever reason, maybe he has guilt about all of his riches and success and he wants them back and do something nice for someone else. But it was huge to have somebody like that, not just open doors, but push me through them. You know what I mean? He would say, I'm like, I don't know. He's like, go, you can do it. And one of the things that happened later was I was asked to go to a group of other authors, well published authors who were very successful and were also speakers. And I don't know, they heard about me and they invited me. And I thought, I don't know, I'm not at their level. It's in the summer. I got to go fight traffic. It's all right, I'll go. So I get seated next to a person, again, the universe at work. We get to talking. She says, my agent asked me to write a book about time management, but I am already writing a book about time management, so I can't do both. Would you be interested? And she said, oh, by the way, it's for creative people, right brainers. Oh, this is perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, I said yes. And so she introduced me to her agent. I got signed by Random House and a whole nother, my life at that point went one way where it could have, who knows? But that was a pivotal, what do we call those? A point of thank you.
Moment, right?
Yeah, and just by me saying, okay, I know these are well-known authors, bigger than me, but so what? I'm not comparing myself to them. I'm going to learn from them. I'm going there to learn. I'm going there to experience what it is that or what are they doing that I'm not. And sure enough, this opportunity came to me because I said yes. And confidence gets you to the point where you say yes, even though your mind is screaming, no, no, no. You overcome that with self-confidence or at least faking it. All right, yes, I'm going to try this. What's the worst that could happen?
Right. Oh, I love that you said that. Fake it till you make it,
Yeah.
and I've also heard it said too that bring the body and the mind will follow. One foot in front of the other. You're not always going to know where the path is going to lead, but you're not going to find out if you're not at least just putting one foot in front of the other. So good stuff. Good stuff. I know that there's a combination, it seems like, in your bookstore. There's the stories that you've written, like Sunshines, but there's also lots of tips and tricks. There's a lot of business books that you have as well. Okay, one last question. Are the business books, those, did you write them because someone had a need? Or were they things that you, as you were becoming a speaker, you just felt like, okay, I'm meeting with this group. These are great tips for them. I'm meeting with this group. I'm presenting for this group. How did you come to write those?
Well, I know I said about a mentor, and I had a real life person that I could call and meet, but you can also have a virtual mentor as well. And so I chose, he didn't know this, but Jimmy Buffett, which I actually did get to meet, but that's another story for another day. But I used him as an example, and my agent told me you can't write both fiction and nonfiction. Pick one. You can't do both. But yet Jimmy Buffett had a bestseller in as a fiction and a nonfiction. A lot of people don't realize that he was a successful author as well as entrepreneur, entertainer. He did it all. But I chose to not listen to my agent and said, I don't believe that you can only do one or the other. And besides, some of the books, like the Wild Idea Club, it's about how to get ideas from the frontline workers at the bottom of a company to the top. We did it through story. Each chapter is a story about how a person did that. And so it's categorized as nonfiction, but each story or each chapter is a story about a real person who implemented the ideas that we wanted to convey. And so I feel like I kind of blended the two. Again, that's why I was so gravitated towards you and your show. And the concept is because stories are just so powerful. And we love hearing them, reading them, sharing them. I mean, I can't think of anything like bad about using stories in your writing. So the books, you think to yourself, well, I see a thick book, I don't have time, I don't. But if it's a story, and it kind of like the One Minute Manager or Who Moved My Cheese or The Greatest Salesman in the World, they're all parables. And you're reading almost fiction, but yet you're learning something. I think that's the ideal way to teach and to learn.
Yes, I agree. Couldn't agree more. 100%. I think what, like you said right at the beginning, you're telling stories on stage. People are going to remember those moments. They're going to remember, hey, I remember seeing this speaker. What was his name? He told this really great story. Let me tell you this story. Oh, wait, I think his name was Lee Silber. It's a win-win.
And the story about my dad, if I tell it in a speech, and it's never easy to tell, I get a little, but it seems like that is the most common reason for people to seek me out afterwards, is because they want to tell me about how their dad or their mom were very stingy with praise, if they gave it
Hmm.
at all. And I always try and tie a story into something. So what I do when after I tell my father's story is I say, here we're all here together. Usually they're in the same industry or have something in common.
Yeah.
Let's have, who wants to give a shout out to someone? We have the time. I have mics for you. And it starts with maybe one. Okay. And oh, well, I think Betty is so great and she's such a good person. She does. And then I'm like, okay, we got to stop. We're running out of time. Because once it gets started, it doesn't stop. But I'm trying to get that prime the pump. And I
Hmm.
say throughout this conference, if you see someone, and again, not in a creepy way, in a very healthy way, give them the compliment that's in your head that you're afraid to say. And
Yep.
trust me, it'll hit. It'll mean something to them. And besides, it feels good to do it. You're getting something out of it as well. Not that we're doing it for that reason, but it feels
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Lee, I could just talk about this stuff all day.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that.
sure.
But unfortunately, it's all the time we have, and I have to wrap it up. But thank you so much for your stories, your personal stories, your stories of being an author, the stories of the people that you've met along the way. And you're just a success story yourself just by doing those things. I think the thread that runs through it all is your curiosity. And I think all of your stories tell us follow that thread, follow that curiosity, and just see where that journey takes you.
Thank you. This went by in a blink of an eye. And so that's proof that when we're sharing stories, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like it's just the best. It is. Stories make the time fly.
They really do. Thank you. And to our listeners, whether you first heard us locally through BTV studios in Bedford, Massachusetts, or you're tuning in from across the globe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Podcasts, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time. Happy storytelling!